Wonder Woman 1984, sequel to the 2017 hit, finally out on HBO, was originally slated to come out last Christmas, then moved up to the summer of 2020, then, because of the coronavirus, shifted 2 or 3 more times, and finally was released digitally as part of the larger move from Warner Brothers. Once again directed by Patty Jenkins, once again written by herself and Geoff Jones, once again starring Gal Gadot and Chris Pine, with Pedro Pascal and Kristen Wiig joining the cast as the new villains. Now, the original Wonder Woman was an absolutely terrific superhero film up until the final 20 minutes, where it suddenly did a 180 turn, reversed its own message, dropped everything that made it unique all along for the purpose of having a horrible CGI battle against the villain at the end. It wasn't just my opinion either, it seemed a prevalent take amongst both critics and general audiences. So, naturally, with the same creative team, it would be easy to expect improvement. I mean, you just take the things that worked, listen to the criticisms, drop the things that didn't quite connect, correct those mistakes, and bam, the sequel writes itself, it will be great. I'm afraid not so much. Let's start with the outline of the plot. As the title suggests, after a short childhood flashback in the prologue, we catch up with Diana in 1984. She's living in Washington, D.C. She's working at the Smithsonian as an anthropologist and does a bit of superhero crime fighting on the side. We also meet a co-worker of hers named Barbara Minerva, played by Kristen Wiig. She's this clumsy, awkward lady, basically invisible to all the people around her, lacks confidence, lacks flair and color, especially when standing next to Diana. The two of them are investigating a mysterious relic, which initially seems to be a worthless fake, but has this inscription that says it can fulfill a single wish for anybody that touches it. And as the two ladies quickly discover, it does seem to do just that. For Barbara, she wishes to be more like Diana, popular, beautiful, confident, at the center of attention, strong and powerful. Diana herself wishes to somehow regain her long lost love, Steve, who died in the previous film and, as the trailers already spoiled, does actually come back. But all wishes come with a price, and so the three characters end up working to, or begin working out how to try and get the relic back, stop it from ruining the world. But that will be hard because a showman, a television personality turned oil businessman, Maxwell Lord, played by Pedro Pascal, also has sights on it, with a purpose much more sinister and also grander in scope. So there's a couple of things to talk about. Let's maybe start with the writing, which is mostly atrocious, and that goes for the story overall as it's developed and the dialogue in the specific scenes, which in many cases just sounds like nothing anybody would say ever. There's several problems with the script. The villain's motivations feel, in the case of Barbara, weak. In the case of Maxwell, nonsensical. I mean, I was wondering what his endgame was with the things he was doing in the film, but the movie never really gets there. It's like he didn't really have an endgame. He didn't really plan ahead to achieve any specific concrete goal. The way they bring back Steve is very weird, and honestly, I'm not sure what they were thinking with the way it goes. It just feels like the creators had no idea what to do with Diana in this one and went, hey, you know what worked in the previous film? The chemistry between the two leads. It was great, so let's just have that back. Then there's also the problem of the runtime. The film goes for 2.5 hours, and there really is no excuse for it to be that long. I mean, we only really have 4 characters in the story who are pretty shallowly drawn and don't even undergo that much development over the course of the film. I mean, think of it like this. Comparable superhero movies, the Marvel movies that had similar runtimes were Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. And those were films with 15 different characters or something. This film has 4 of them and way simpler plot and way less set pieces. I mean, it should have been shorter, that's for damn sure. Then once we leave the writing itself, there are also problems with direction. There are moments in the film where, despite the long runtime, weirdly enough, characters are either teleporting across the world to get to where they need to be, or changing costumes on the fly. There are 2 scenes like that for Diana, and the second one is just bafflingly odd, because it's like earlier in the film, We have established that she has this great golden armor with wings. Again, spoiled by the trailer. That she keeps hidden away in her closet, kind of waiting for better times or something. And then she's chasing the villains in her regular costume in the final act, and she's lassoing from cloud to cloud and from lighting to lighting in the storm. And one moment she's flying like that in her regular costume, and then there's a cut, and she lands at the place in the golden suit, and we are offered no explanation as to where that came from. There's nothing. In general, the scenes with Diana flying, since we're on that subject, or jumping around or doing acrobatics, look surprisingly poorly. And I think this part is mainly on Gal Gadot, unfortunately. In pretty much all of those scenes, when I look at her face, I don't really see a superhero that's doing superhero stuff. I see a lady that's hooked to a bunch of cables, and she's kind of scared that one of them might snap and she'll break a leg. She doesn't do a very good job of convincing me that she's really Wonder Woman. And that, it goes back to the first film. We knew, or at least I knew back then, that Gal Gadot, as gorgeous and as nice of a person as she is, she's not that great of an actress. The first movie, I think, worked around that by having the story be of her first encounters with the outside world. So she was a bit awkward, out of place, and stiff, and it fit with the character. This time around, it shows in much worse ways. On the other hand, we have Pedro Pascal, who is campy as all hell, and I mean this in a good way, surprisingly enough. I think his chewing the scenery kind of works with how ridiculous his character ultimately is. Why not have fun with it? I've actually read he tried to channel Nicolas Cage in his performance, which makes a fair bit of sense. Barbara is a weird character because she's somewhere between the camp and the seriousness, and apart from that, manages to be also quite possibly the most egregious example of that Hollywood trope where you'll have a gorgeous woman who's dressed at the beginning in poorly fitted clothes, has hair tied up and glasses on, and everybody is pretending like she's ugly. And then she gets the magical confidence boost, and suddenly she's in a dress and her hair is slightly different, but not that different, and she loses the glasses, and who would have thought she's actually a beautiful woman? Yeah, it's almost embarrassing how the film takes that trope and makes it basically one of the core threads of the plot. Just what were they thinking? I also want to talk about the 1980s setting because I was quite excited by it, and unfortunately it feels criminally wasted. There's basically like 2 or 3 scenes where they go all out on showing us, look at all these crazy outfits and cars and hairstyles and shit, and then for the rest of the film they completely forget about all that. The time period has almost no bearing on the plot, and it basically could have taken place anytime else. Which makes me feel it was kind of the producers going, what's popular these days? Stranger Things. Let's do the same thing. Without really understanding how using those elements worked for that particular series. I could go on probably ragging on the film for a while longer, but the thing is, it isn't terrible. It just feels very mediocre, and it looks like the creators didn't really have any good idea on which way to go with the sequel. It's like a really messy mix of a couple of different ideas and tones that don't mesh with one another too well. It's got poor writing, it's got wonky CGI, questionable plot decisions, pretty awful ending, which is really difficult to believe in. And finally, it's too long by about half an hour. It's a shame, really. And again, it's not completely horrible. It's not like I wanted to turn it off. It was just I didn't have any reason to turn it off, but I struggled to come up with reasons to really get engaged and continue watching. I was pretty indifferent to whatever was going on the screen for the entire runtime. So it seemed like, after the first one, Patty Jenkins was on a clear path to impress us all with a sequel and managed to come up only with disappointment, which is a shame because I really wanted to like this film. I really did, but I tried to search in my mind for things that I enjoyed about it, and I'm coming up short.